that our video is recording with Channel 3. So at this time, I'll go through some preliminary items on the agenda for today, June 16th, 2022. At this time, I'd ask everyone to please turn off or silence your cell phone. We do have two preliminary announcements for the board this afternoon. Case 2020-56 has been withdrawn, and 2020-56, I'm unsure if that was on the final agenda or not. I will look. Yes, at the top of page 2, that item was withdrawn. And then case number 2022-61, my understanding is that that case is being deferred. And so any members of the public who are here for that case, which is a request for a rear setback variance at 921 Woodland Street, if you're here to speak on that matter, if you could please contact our office, we'd be happy to give you the next date, as a new date has not yet been selected. Our public hearing instructions for today will be that I, as a member of a code staff, will introduce the cases that are on public hearing and present maps, pictures, and site plans for each of the subject properties. The information that I present, as well as the initial application, any applicable recommendations from other government offices, and any letters we've received from members of the public that have been provided to the board members for review in advance of today's meeting and will be maintained as part of the record of these proceedings. I'll call each case up for public hearing in the order they appear on the docket, with the exception of case 63, which we will go ahead and hear at the top of the docket this afternoon. When each case is called, the applicant will have an opportunity to present your case to the board after I make a presentation. If there are parties present in opposition to an application, we'll ask for those parties to raise their hand, identify themselves, and if there is opposition present, then both sides will have 10 minutes to make a presentation. To applicants before the board today, please note that if parties are here in opposition and wish to speak against the approval of your matter, you may wish to reserve some of your 10 minutes in order to rebut the opposition testimony. If there is no opposition present on your matter, you will have 5 minutes to make your presentation. Everyone appearing before the board is advised that providing false or misleading testimony to the board may result in the revocation of a permit. After the close of the public hearing, the board will discuss the case and take a vote. The Metropolitan Code requires 4 votes to grant or deny an application. Board members may be unavailable from time to time, so if a motion fails to attain 4 concurring votes today, the case will be reset for the next regular board meeting to provide any members who may have been absent an opportunity to watch today's proceedings, review the record, and render a vote on the motion that was made. Once a vote is taken on your application, a party who disagrees with the outcome may request a rehearing by the board within 60 days. Parties may also appeal the board's decision to the Davidson County Chancery Court by filing a writ of certiorari within 60 days. All parties are encouraged to seek independent legal counsel regarding the filing of an appeal and to ensure that all deadlines and procedures are followed. If you're an applicant and your case is granted, the board's decision will remain active for 2 years. If your building permit application is not completed within that time, the board's decision will expire and no longer be applicable. Finally, some information: you'll need to operate the microphones at the table before you. Please press the button at the base of the microphone just one time. A red light will come on. At that time, please state your name and address before making your presentation. And please note that if you accidentally push the button multiple times and the light starts flashing, to please wait, and we'll need technical assistance to reset the microphones. Before we begin calling in the agenda today, I just wanted to ensure we don't have any council members present who may wish to speak, and I do not see any. So at this time, we will begin calling the matters on the agenda. At this time, we'd like to go ahead and call up case number 2022-63. That is an application by Sean McInnes for property at 3408 Elkins. Okay, making sure that we had our applicants present. May you please turn your microphone on?
Pardon me?
Oh, I see. It came on late. Thank you.
I'm going to be recusing myself on this one.
Thank you. Okay. Ms. Karpenick, would you mind chairing the meeting for this particular application? Thank you. I lost my PowerPoint. I'm just going to pull it back up again.
We're just waiting on the PowerPoint.
Okay. Case 2022-63 is a request to retain the 14-foot street setback for property with an existing non-conforming duplex located at 3408 Elkins in the RS5 zoning district. For you here is the zoning map and an aerial view of this neighborhood. There's a street view of the house. It's a two-family dwelling. And then here you can see the streetscape. I wanted to just bring to your attention that the property does sit pretty well in front of the contextual setback for the street. And then you can also see that here from like the corner of the home compared to the neighboring parcel. And then here's the site plan that was submitted by the applicant. And another rendering submitted by the applicant. I think that's my last slide. So is there anyone here in opposition to this case? I don't see any, so you'll have 5 minutes to make your presentation.
Okay, the plans are part of it.
Okay, so will you state your name and address for the record?
Yes, if you would please,
put on your
push the button and get that red light on, and then state your name and address. Thank you.
It's Sean McInnes and 1390 Adams Street, Nashville.
Tony McKay, 8223 Alamo Road, Brentwood.
But so the plans that I have in front of you are a little more updated than what you can see on here, and they actually reflect the existing structure. So if you go to page A1, you can see we're keeping the existing structure. In the bottom right corner, you can see the dash marks show what's existing there. So basically, we're just trying to keep the duplex as it sits right now where it is, and we're trying to do an addition on the back and going vertical with it as well. We're keeping the doors, windows, everything on the front, the whole facade of the house, and then just going up, basically. We've noted the setbacks and everything on the sides and the rear. We're not trying to change any of those. We're just literally just trying to keep it where it's sitting and do a big addition on the back. So, and if you go to page A5, there is a better picture of the house or the duplex. You can see what we're looking at and compare that to above. So.
Okay, if you could let us know what your hardship is in this variance request.
Well, we're trying to keep the existing structure how it sits and just do an addition off of it instead of tearing down the whole thing. So we want to keep it how it is. So just with an addition.
Do you have anything else to add? And the board might want to ask some questions as well.
I don't have anything specific, but if you guys have any questions.
Okay.
Maybe bringing up the setback of the house next to it is.
Yeah, oh, and that is one other thing. The house that sits next to that picture made it look not so great, but the house right beside it sits way further back than what the rest of them do. that one does relative. So the other ones beside it do come further forward.
And I can't remember if I saw it in the packet. If you had contact with that neighbor, are they in support of your,
I haven't spoken to them. I only had one person call me, and they just asked a random question about how they can do this for themselves or what they need to do, like what it meant, basically.
okay.
Okay, anyone else have questions? Okay, well, oh, you do?
Let me just ask one thing. Can you take another shot at the hardship, please? Just sort of think about it for just a minute or two or three, because that might help a little bit.
Yeah. So realistically, we've got the existing structure, how it is there. The way the topography works on the lot, it kind of drops down right at the front. We're just trying to kind of maintain how it sits. We'll be putting a garage in the rear of it. So the way the parking is, it'll be a better looking setup, honestly, with how it would work. It'll maintain exactly how it is on the front, obviously, in the existing setup and whatnot. And as I said, we're not trying to change any of the other setbacks. We want to just basically build a better looking house or addition off of the back of it and just improve it. It'll make it look more in character as well with the rest of the neighborhood. So
I'll have to say, I think I misspoke. This looks like a item D appeal.
yeah, that's what I was going to say. I didn't think, do we have to have a hardship on this?
Not for an item D.
Yeah.
So we're looking at the nonconformity and
Right.
whether or not this makes what's proposed makes this more nonconforming. Hopefully I got that language right. Elizabeth might want to read the language to us.
Yeah, actually, I was hoping that we might have assistance from the zoning examiner, but that our scheduling didn't work out with trying to make sure that we had a quorum for this one. So initially, we were going to do this one toward the end, but I had questions from the beginning on whether it was a non-conforming or a variance request as well.
So just to clarify, if we were tearing it down is when we would need the hardship, right? If we were starting over fresh. That's how it was explained to me, I thought beforehand. So, because we were keeping the structure.
Yeah, I would imagine, but I don't know that we can comment on that since that's
Gotcha.
not the case at hand. I'm
Yeah.
just looking in my notebook for the correct wording
I understand.
that we need to use. So if no one else has questions, we'll close the public hearing. Okay. Any discussion, or do we need a few minutes to look through the plans since they were just presented to us?
Yeah, I'm still looking through this a little bit.
Okay. Just give us a few minutes
fine.
to look at things.
I guess this would be a question for codes or our legal counsel, I'm not sure, but would the, is there any precedence or anything related to the height of the building as related to nonconformity? Because, I mean, what I'm seeing here is existing as a one-story ranch, classic, structure, whatever. And then what we're seeing here proposed is a, I don't see the exact height at the top of the eave, but it looks like, 35 feet tall structure from the floor there. So you're going up around 20 plus 25 feet. So does nonconformity have any relation here to verticality as far as, I think that's the question. I think we're all kind of, is there anything, I guess, in the zoning code that you know of, and I know you said the zoning examiners couldn't be here to kind of explain their view on this, but it's Elizabeth or our legal counsel. Is there any precedent for that?
I'm sorry, so basically your concern is the height, that it's,
Yeah, well,
Okay.
yeah, as far as, because I know it's different from a variance. A variance wouldn't have any real the height wouldn't factor into that. It's literally just like, but like with non-conform, I'm just a little bit, fuzzy on this other,
So,
item
yes,
you feel.
and this is the reason why I have the question about whether it's a variance or a non-conforming. But
Not allowed.
I'll read this section to you, which is from 1740-660D. It says, a non-conforming structure damaged by any involuntary means to less than 50% of the total may be reconstructed. So less than 50%, it can be reconstructed. If damage exceeds 50%, of the total floor area of the structure shall be reconstructed in accordance with all applicable provisions of this title. So when you're expanding it beyond 50% of what's currently there, my understanding is that you would need to comply with all the provisions of the title, which would therefore lend itself more into a request for a variance. But I don't think that we have a total consensus internally on that interpretation.
When I spoke with Joey Hargis, he said as long as we're not tearing down more than 50% of the structure is how they view it. So if you're keeping 50% of the structure.
Sorry, we'll have to open the public hearing
sorry
for
about
you
that.
to speak again. Which, does anyone have a?
So it sounds like, based on what he's saying, that we are all saying the same thing. And so I guess then my question would be some proof that at least 50% of the existing structure is being retained. It doesn't, I guess I still have a question in my mind of whether or not that proof has been met.
Logan, did you have another question? Your light was still on. Does anyone?
Yeah, quick question. So, as I read the plans, my understanding is that you're effectively removing the roof of the structure and then you're adding on
Correct.
top of it.
Yep.
So what can you explain to us or enlighten us a little bit on what is actually being, what is being removed from the existing structure?
Yeah. So we'll be taking essentially the roof will come off. That'll go up. We'll be keeping the front wall, side walls running down, the middle wall running down. Because right now, if you look like in the picture, there's literally just a wall running right in between those two windows in the middle. That's the dividing wall. That'll all be maintained. Everything in the existing structure with how it sits will be maintained. And then we're literally just ripping the roof off and we're going from the top plates and going vertical from there. And then on the back wall is where we'll take it off and we'll extend into the house and add the addition. So if you look, the actual building footprint, the new updated building envelope sits behind it just, I think it's like 10 feet. I'd have to look at the exact measurement. Sits behind, and then it actually gets wider, so we can expand out. So we're literally just going to basically the back, or 2/3 back of the house, and we're going to extend back from there. We're going out and back, so into that building envelope.
I think this is a question maybe for Elizabeth. Yeah, maybe I'm thinking like a lawyer too much.
Well, yeah, Mr. Hargis is here, so he would be more experienced with this.
The word bifurcation keeps coming to mind for me, and it sounds as if this is something where there is both a component that is a modification to an existing non-conforming structure and a variance request that are both seemingly baked into this. And so procedurally, I'm not sure how we need to be handling that.
Sure. No, for us, the original, I think the filing of the case is in addition to a non-conforming structure. So the existing house clearly does not conform in setbacks. So for us, as long as they don't damage or destroy more than 50%, which I just heard him testify, in my belief they're not, any additions to that structure would have to be compliant with side and rear setbacks. But so long as it does, it's this board's discretion whether they feel to approve such an addition to a house or structure. So hope that answers your question.
So has it been determined that what they have submitted does not exceed the 50% requirement?
It's not whether the addition's 50% more of the thing. It's the damage or removal of the structure that's there. So as long as they utilize the front walls, side walls, they're not exceeding 50% destruction of that. They can use that as a base to build off of and still falls under the addition to non-conforming section of the code.
Does that include interior walls as well, or?
No, generally we look at the exterior walls and determine that 50%.
Okay.
We've had some folks that have tried to demolish structures and leave the foundation thinking that saved them, or left the front wall of the structure. Those aren't enough. It's sort of that standard we look and see what they've
left to do that.
So the question at hand for us to look at, I'm not sure what, if codes is determined that this is appropriate, then what are we looking at?
Well, you're under the zoning code for additions to non-conforming uses or structures, under your powers in 1740-180 item D, the code states that this board shall determine the appropriateness of changes to non-conforming uses or structures. If you're needing more of a guideline of what's my measuring tool, the non-conforming structure section of 1740-660 talks about, let's see. A non-conforming structure may be enlarged or converted to another permitted use provided there's no increase in the degree of nonconformity. So the first question is, what is the nonconformity? It's the street setback. Are they increasing the street setback? The answer is no. And that's why under item D, it's here in front of you. So it is a somewhat subjective standard for you, but.
But the use has not changed, right? It was residential and it continues to be residential.
It's two-family dwelling now and will continue to be so.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any, has there ever been considered with anything to the height with your review of nonconformity?
No, the nonconformity, if the height were an issue, we would look at it.
Right.
But they are permitted to build to what the code allows for.
Right. Okay.
So long height's not an issue, rear or side setbacks aren't issues. For us, we've historically handled that. If it's, I'm sitting at this mark, X number of feet from the road, and I'm continuing to stay that, then it comes here. I would love some flexibility in the code to let me approve that administratively and not bring it here at all.
Yeah.
But because I've sort of got competing sections of the code, we defer to this board.
Is public hearing still open, right?
It is.
It is. Is the structure, this may be for a combination of the applicant and for Mr. Hargis, but is the structure, the addition that's been proposed on the back that would extend it, remains within the setbacks?
Yes, and they're noted on there.
Okay.
You can see, if you look on A1 in the bottom right corner,
Okay.
it shows the 20-foot setback on there.
Also, in A1, you can see the entire existing structure that we're keeping, and only the rear wall of the perimeter walls will be removed.
Thank you.
Okay, any additional questions? Okay, do you have, your light is still on. Do you have one more thing to say? No, you're good? Okay, then we'll close the public hearing again. Any discussion? Well, I'll say the height is concerning to me, especially because it's out. The existing structure was 1 story. The neighboring home, it looked to be 2 stories. If there's a 3-story structure, in the setback, it's obstructing the neighbor. I think it's changing how the neighbor, affects that lot. But I don't know. It's a little bit, I'm with you, and I'm not sure.
Yeah, I agree with that, but I don't know if that's part of what our criteria to judge this on.
Mm-hmm.
As Mr. Hargis testified, that they typically view this simply as the nonconformity simply as a setback issue rather than a height issue, and it complies with the height allowed in the base zoning. It's just only about how close it is to the street, essentially.
Yeah, I still think it comes before this board, so we are able to comment on that or decide on that. That's my opinion of it, but that's where I am.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at, and again, we are dealt the cards that the council hands us with respect to the wording. The code section itself, I don't like the fact that it uses the word damaged, simply because it would imply something a little narrower maybe than what's the case. But, I keep looking at this. A non-conforming structure may be enlarged or converted to another permitted use, provided there's no increase in the degree of nonconformity. Well, what does increase in the degree of nonconformity mean? I think it's pretty clear from the plans that they've submitted that, we're going up and adding on in a manner that doesn't extend it beyond what's there or what's permitted, at least. So I'm inclined to support the request at this point, but I'm open to other considerations.
Okay, are there any motions then? Maybe over there?
Well, I've spoken, so I will make a motion that we permit the addition as a enlargement of the nonconforming structure because based upon the testimony of the applicant and the plans submitted, it does not appear that there is an increase in the degree of nonconformity.
Okay, any seconds? Any discussions on the motion? Okay. I guess we'll vote. All in favor of the motion, raise your hand and say aye. All opposed to the motion, raise your hand and.
And I'm abstaining.
Okay, so we have a 3-2. So what's next, Elizabeth? That'll stay on the docket?
Okay, so the way that this rule works is that the vote is 3 to, I think we had 3 to 2 to 1, 3-2-1. And although we have all members who have cast their vote, we're still required to put it on the next agenda in the event anyone wishes to change their vote. So it'll be back on the next agenda solely to either confirm or allow for an amendment of the vote.
Okay, so I think we had one abstention that's not in the room, and then we have another.
I just
Yes,
abstained
well,
because
he'll be
I
shown as
missed
recusing himself.
I abstained because I missed the first half of their presentation. I can
okay.
go back and watch before the next meeting and cast a vote if that makes it easier. But
Yes.
I abstained because I didn't see the first half, but I can go back and watch the video and then cast a vote next meeting.
Very good. Thank you so much.
Okay, so next case.
Just going to take a moment and find our chair, and then as you all exit the public hearing table. The next item we'll call up is case 2022-33. I'll pull that up on my slide deck.
And I will be abstaining from this one.
Okay. The record will reflect that. Okay, I think we have everyone back in place now. Case 2022-33 is a request for a special exception from the maximum height requirements for properties at 1500 to 1518 Hayes Street and 131 15th Avenue North to make certain amendments to an order entered by the BZA on July 13th, 2020 for these same properties, and to add or correct a reference to the following properties. That would be 1510 and 1517 Hayes, 2 parcels on 15th Avenue and 2 parcels on Broadway, which will be highlighted in the presentation. All the properties here are located within the CF zoning district, except for one of the parcels, 131 15th Avenue, is zoned MUI-A. Planning Department has recommended approval of this application, and that was sent to you all by email just today, so I could understand if you may not have had an opportunity to review it yet. So I'd be happy to go over that in more detail with you as far as the conditions that they're recommending at the end of the presentation, if any of the members would like. The legal standard for the case under 1712-060F for a special height exception for the board is that the applicant must show that the proposed building height will not create an adverse impact on air, light, shadow, or wind velocity patterns relative to existing structures or create those types of obstructions for approved but not yet built structures in the area. And the board must also find that the proposed building height contributes to and does not detract from a strong pedestrian-friendly streetscape. Here is the zoning map of the area, and so most of these properties are in the core frame district except for just the one small parcel to the rear. Here's the aerial photo, and these properties are located in the Midtown area. Here are some site photos of the site, and as the planning department's recommendation memorandum indicated, it's north of 11 acres size property. One portion, a building, is a historical building, and the site plan recommends that for conservation, as you can see to the top left on the site plan. The site plan is a few pages, and so I've got each of those here evidencing some of the air, light, shadow, and wind velocity standards for the board today. So the board previously entered an order on July 13th, that was 2020, approving certain special exceptions from height regulations for properties here at the subject site. Applicants are before you today to seek an increase of the height of certain lots along the north side of Hayes from the 19 stories that were previously approved to 20, to add or correct the 6 additional parcels, 2 of which are new to the site. The other 4 were already previously included in the site plan and were omitted from the face of the application. And the applicants are seeking to apply those height standards to the 2 new lots as well. So here on the updated site plan, which I've blown up just to highlight one section, which was notated as parcel A in the original site plans, as well as the order previously entered by the board. With the addition of the 2 new lots, this creates a contiguous uninterrupted block as part of the site along the north side of Hayes and bounded on the east by 15th Avenue. The applicant is seeking the board to approve for those 2 lots to be incorporated into parcel A and for this part of the site to be increased from 19 to 20 stories. On the right, you can see on the bigger map where exactly this property lies. It's north of Hayes and, of course, parallel to both Broadway on the south side and Church on the north. This is a diagram that was submitted by the applicants, which shows the 6 parcels that are being added. The 2 parcels sort of at the top of your screen in yellow are the 2 parcels that are being added because they were acquired after the prior BZA order by the applicants. The ones toward the bottom in blue were already included on the site plan, and these were the ones that the applicant has submitted, were just simply left off the application in a clerical error. So this concludes our presentation. And is there anyone here in opposition to this case? I don't see anyone, so the applicants would have 5 minutes to make a presentation.
Thank you, board. I'm John Cooper with Waller 511 Union, and I'm here representing Reed District Land Co-Partners, which is the applicant, and the developer Hines. With me is Reed Hayes and David Lawrence from Hines. As noted, this is primarily it does several things. It's primarily a housekeeping extension. As you know, the orders are good for 2 years. As a result of some COVID delays and some litigation that was concerning the property, the applicant, the developer, was not able to apply for the permits within the 2-year period. So we're seeking a renewal or an extension of the order for 2 years. It, as Ms. Waits noted, it adds 4 parcels that were included within the site plan that the BZA reviewed and approved in 2020, but were inadvertently left out of the application and the order. So it adds those 2, and it increases the height for parcel A from 19 to 20 stories, which is consistent with the T5 MU policy and the special Midtown policy. The property is zoned core frame. As you know, there's no maximum height for core frame, just the height control plane. But section 1712-060F allows buildings to penetrate the height control plane if the Board of Zoning Appeals approves a special exception. We have had many discussions over the past couple months with Lucy Kempf and with Planning Department leadership regarding the design elements of the project and the traffic flow. You do have a letter from planning recommending approval with several conditions, which we have agreed to. We have agreed to fully clad the exterior of visible parking garages, to maintain the existing facade of the historic Coke building with the understanding that there will be new windows and some building entries along Hayes Street and openings for service areas. But we're preserving the facade of the historic Coke building with those 2 minor exceptions. We've agreed that there will be no ephes or stucco as part of the building materials for the project. And we've agreed to continue to cooperate with NDOT and planning regarding the mobility study that is currently underway for the area, including our site, the Reed site, and some adjacent sites. Arcadis has evaluated the area and has submitted some guidance to NDOT and planning, and we are working with them to ensure that the road and pedestrian connectivity is appropriate for the area and is harmonious with the other developments in the area. So other than the addition of these few parcels and the increase in height of parcel A from 19 to 20, and these new conditions agreed to with planning, all other conditions that the board approved in 2020 would remain and would be part of the new order. We are not seeking to change any of the prior conditions. Nothing has changed regarding the underlying zoning or the study that was provided in 2020 regarding sufficient light and air. So all of that information remains the same, and that study is still valid. And this proposal, as noted by the planning department, will contribute to a strong pedestrian-friendly streetscape. I've had multiple communications with Councilman O'Connell throughout this process, and he gave me permission to relay to you that he does not take any exception to our request or to the planning department conditions. The letter that I submitted to you on April 1st goes into much more detail, so I would refer you to that, and I'm also available to answer any questions. That concludes my presentation.
Okay, any questions from the, I have one, so, and I'm not real concerned about it, but you're going up to 20 feet on one, or 20 stories on one building? Okay, and so you said the light and shadow study, which I remember looking at last time, is still valid, but is it, if you're going up another story on a building? I don't think it's going to make a big difference, but kind of talk to me about that.
David Lawrence with Hines at 438 Houston Street. We have not done a brand new light and shadow study, but our expectation would be that the additional one story, which is about 10 feet for the residential project, would not impact the existing light and shadow study.
Okay, so the height is 10 feet, the one story just adds about 10 feet? Okay.
Approximately 10 to 13 feet.
Okay, thank you. Yep. Anybody else? Any questions or? Okay, well, thank you very much, and we don't have any opposition. I know that there was one letter of opposition from apparently somebody that lives nearby, but they're not here, so. Oh, yeah, sorry about that. I'll get that one day. When it's red, it's on.
That's right.
Okay, we'll close the public hearing and discuss then. My concern was just that adding the one story, did that change things? And that's why I'm not an architect. I would just think one story would be more than 10 feet, but I guess if it's residential, you have lower ceilings, so
I think that it's 20 stories in the air isn't going to
make a
make
difference.
that much of a difference, the way the shadows cast.
Any other comments? I mean, I think it's well put together. I appreciate the applicant's very thorough, information, and a picture's worth 1,000 words when you have this much going on. So those are very helpful. So sounds like the silence means a motion might be coming forth.
Yeah, I mean, I'm honestly less worried about the shadows, and the only thing that concerns me is I know it says they're going to screen the parking along some of the Broadway and some of these other streets, but, I would have liked to seen it, a little bit more active on the streetscape with, liner, retail or something like that, but as far as the overall plan, I don't have any strong objection to what's being proposed, and it is a special exception. So, and it's, as it's mentioned, it's been approved before by this board. So I wouldn't have any. I wouldn't see the addition of the extra story as a strong impact on light shadow, or significant impact at least.
It's just more of a crowded area. I'm a little more familiar with this area because that's right near where my home is. So that's the only thing but that's not.
So I might be forgetting something from the last time, or maybe something changed from the last time. Can we reopen the public hearing?
Sure, yeah. Any objection to reopening the public hearing? Okay, we're going to reopen the public hearing, which means somebody's going to be getting a question.
And this was 2 years ago that we first saw this. And what I had remembered was there was testimony that the street would be active. And now we're reading here about cladding exterior parking garages. They're visible from Broadway Church, 15th, 16th Hayes. Can you describe, or maybe it's in our packet and I missed it, the extent of the parking garages on those streets? And is there retail on those streets like my colleagues have asked?
There is, and I don't know if it's specifically addressed in the application, but this is part of the discussion with planning, is showing how this works from a ground plane experience. So that first level, especially along Hayes Street, on the road grid that will come as this gets fully built out, is basically fully activated with retail uses. So the garage structures, as you go up above the first level, there will be some above ground garages, and that kind of cladding is for those levels that are above the first level and below the first occupiable level.
Thanks for explaining that.
Yeah, I appreciate that as well. I guess I would kind of, if any of my fellow board members need a visual, it's kind of like on Commerce, where you have, where Satco used to be, you have the ground floor retail, and then you have parking above, but it would actually be clad to look like a building rather than a parking garage, which I appreciate.
So does anybody have any more questions while we have the public hearing? Okay, we'll close the public hearing and
I'll make a motion, if there's no more discussion, to approve the special exception request, including all of the conditions put forth by the planning department.
I'll second that. Okay, we have a motion to approve with all the conditions the planning set forth. Any further discussion? Okay, all in favor say aye. Any opposed? Okay, that passes 6-0. So thank you. Next case, please.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. The next case on our docket today is case 2022-59. This is a request for a variance from the street setback and visibility requirements to approve a stone fence constructed at 831 Highland Crest Drive, located in the RS 15 zoning district. The applicant was sent an abate notice by the codes department on March 23rd, notifying them that the fence was in violation of the height and visibility requirements in the zoning code. Here is the zoning map for that area and an aerial picture of the neighborhood. These are the current photos of the site. You can see the stone fence out front. This is sort of how the visibility triangle would apply toward the property. This is meant for illustration purposes, because it's a corner lot. And we don't have a site plan per se, so we don't have the specific dimensions, but hopefully gather that information. And if you'd please state your name and your address. Is there anyone here in opposition to this case? I don't see anyone, Mr. Chair. You have a better view than I do, so.
I don't see anyone
okay.
either, so I think we're good.
Then you all will have 5 minutes to make your presentation.
I apologize. I didn't know what to expect, so I didn't bring everybody copies. But my name is Deborah Schmueli. I live at 831 Highland Crest Drive, and I'm the owner. And there was an existing fence on the property, which I don't know how old it is. So it was falling down, so I replaced it, the exact perimeters of the existing fence. And one end of Cloudland, there's no traffic on this road either way, because one's a dead end and the other way, there's like maybe 10 houses and there's 2 accesses on each side. We even went around and talked to our neighbors prior and after and got petitions. They said, yeah, they're for it. It beautifies the neighborhood. It, enhances it. And it is a beautiful structure, and it would be terrible to destroy it. But, the pillars in between, it is going to be visible because there's a deck you can't see in that picture, but there's a deck, and up above, it has very thin cables that was going to run in between the posts, so there would not be, any problem with visibility. But it's the right height as far as the lower structure. It's back enough on the sides. But everyone we talk to is for the fence because it does make the neighborhood look a lot better, and it's beautiful. I don't know what else to say. Do you?
Hello, my name is Uzi Shmueli. We measure the entire construction, and it is 30 inches from ground up. What's brought up as remarks was the heights of the pillars and the visibility of from the side streets, and that's why we made up this appeal in here. To come up and see if we can save this structure as is, because it's really didn't interfere with none of the neighbors, which we went and talked to all of them. Yes. Thank you.
Any questions?
Would you like to see the petition, everybody, for it? Would you like to see the petition that everyone's for it? We also had the councilman come.
Nobody objected, man, so we assume. I mean, that's what we really.
We have letters in our packet that show some of the support for it.
And our councilman, he was going to try to make it, but he said, if he couldn't, he was definitely sending a letter.
There's a letter in our packet for him as well.
I have one question. If can you all describe what the slope of the front yard is like? The slope? Yeah, what the slope of the yard is like.
I would like to. So it's very low slope and has been created through the entire fence. There is some PVC pipes for water, if there's any water coming up through rain or anything. There's a PVC penetrating to the fence all throughout to let and allow water, if there's any, captured there to pull into the street. But the slope is very minimal. I would say less than 5%.
So, a question here, there's some rebar sticking up out of a lot of these pillars.
Correct.
Is it, or how much higher are you going up with the fence, or is that just for
No
the
more.
caps?
No more.
And I understand somewhere there was a picture with, you've put the caps on it already?
Yes, but the caps are, and we have not continued working on that until this meeting is going to be cleared what we should do on this point. That's why we haven't done the rebar cutting and putting up the recaps on top of them, because we were uncertain. We were uncertain after this meeting.
How much rebar you needed?
Correct.
Okay. So other question, how many strands of wire or cable will you be putting between each of the pillars?
Likely 3, and they're very thin, they're 332. So
Show you a picture?
Is it already, does that show the cable?
that doesn't show the
It
cable.
will, yeah, it does it up at the deck.
Can you?
We can see that in our packet, ma'am. We can
Okay,
see that.
Okay,
We can see that in our packet,
Okay.
yeah. So I guess my only question is, your testimony is that above what's shown there currently, it'll be substantially open, just have that cable in it, and then the pillars themselves. Okay, thank you.
Can we see the exhibit with the visibility triangle again? That one's not in our packet.
Which one is that?
It's the visibility triangle exhibit. That's not in the packet.
And I guess one other question I thought of, is there any specific reason for the height, like that you're, I don't know, trying to keep a dog from running out, or any specific, just aesthetic purely on that?
Just the beautification of the structure. It's allowed the pillars to stand up like in a distance of like 12 feet from each other, but rather than that, it's an open from both sides. So it's just to enhance the property, because it was like a PVC and it's all broken apart.
Okay.
So that's
All
gotcha.
And can you kind of describe, so you said the old fence was like a PVC fence. Was it like a picket fence? Was it the old fence?
Yes.
Maybe in our packet too.
It is a picket fence, sir.
Okay, just a picket fence. Okay, that's fine. That's all.
Sure.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the applicants? Okay, we'll close the public hearing and discuss. Well, I mean, I'll just comment, I think it's safe to say that 99% of people in Nashville, maybe 99.9%, don't know that you have to go get a permit before you put up a fence. So I don't think this is the one where like we had a couple weeks ago, where somebody issued a permit that said, clearly you can only go so high. I guess the only little bit of, when people come up to have something approved, I like to see what it's going to look like in final form. And I'm not real concerned about the cable, but I think probably I would be in favor, if we approve it, of making sure we know what's going to be done with the cable.
Yeah, the tough thing here is the hardship, because the hardship is only financial and beautification. So, I struggle with it. The neighbors seem to like it. Councilman seems to like it. I agree with you on the cabling. It's not going to be visually obtrusive. I'm torn on this one.
So your issue is the hardship?
Yeah, it's the hardship.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm with you. The thing that I know about is, the further up slope you build a fence on a property, the less stable it is my, I maybe would rely on our architect folks for some clarity on that. I know I've litigated matters where there's stability issues when you have a fence that's further up slope, but I would be curious as to your thoughts on it, as to whether having a fence that's closer is better for its own stability.
Well, I don't know if I would necessarily say that. per se, but only, yeah, well,
You can call me an idiot, that's.
well, I mean, I wouldn't do that. I would never do that.
So, we already know you're a lawyer.
Yeah, I only call Mr. Lawless that. No, I was kidding. But the only, the only thing as far as the location of it that I can see that could be a hardship from where you might build it otherwise is a mature tree there. That's if you build a little bit further back, you'd be affecting that mature tree that's on the property. But I do hear Mr. Cole's point about it kind of lacking a hardship that's not self-generated or financial in nature. So, but I think there is there may be some wiggle room for the the minimal intrusiveness of the with the mature tree there being in mind.
And usually in this case, if we're searching for a hardship, it's stylistic context, and if it's within, it looks good. It's not an ugly fence by any means, but it doesn't really necessarily fit the architectural context or anything around it.
Mr. Chairman, can we reopen the
public hearing?
And give them a shot at?
Sure, yeah. No, any objection to reopening the public hearing? Okay, we're going to reopen the public hearing, which if you heard me say earlier, means you're going to get a question from somebody. So probably Mr. Lawless.
Well, I'm just going to sort of, and hopefully you've listened to what's been going on up here. You're clued in. We're trying to find the hardship other than, it's beautiful, beautiful fence. And I'm not criticizing it. I'm sort of stuck in that same area that Mr. Cole is, and you're right. And I'm hoping they can move it in another direction.
So to Mr. Lawless's point, finances aren't considered a hardship. So, in the packet, the hardship is listed as, significant amount of money that's been spent on the fence. And for this panel, we can't consider that as a hardship. So there would have to be some other type of hardship.
Wanted to ask a question of the zoning department, but I don't know if the public hearing was still open and they were going to respond to something.
Well, it is still open, but we can close it and open it back up if we need to. So Ms. Davis you have a question for the
I just had a question for the applicant.
Okay.
When I'm looking at the pictures of your lot, I'm wondering if you guys could describe the topography, because from the pictures that it seems, it looks like there's a slight slope, and as Mr. Newton mentioned, there is a mature tree, and so if you guys could just describe the condition of the topography of your lot and sort of why you guys built it this way. And it looks like you guys don't understand my question, so. I'm sorry?
Was the question why we build it up on this perimeter?
Or if you could just describe, are there any slopes on your yard? I see the mature tree near the border of the fence. Is your lot pretty flat, or is there?
It's fairly flat.
Okay.
In the back of the house.
And I did make sure that they did not even 24-inch footing, but 36-inch footing. So that footing is 36 inches deep.
Okay.
For sure.
So is there a reason that you didn't build it further back than it is right now? Is there a reason why you couldn't build it at where the zoning code says to do it?
Was the same area?
The truth is, it was the exact same perimeter of the fence before I moved in that was there.
Okay.
And so we thought it was farmed in.
Gotcha. Okay.
That's where the old fence was. So there was already an encroachment, if they're okay. And then do you know where you're looking at the front? And I can tell you've got to have an encroachment here on the corner. I can't tell where your property line is on the very front. Do you have any, and is your encroachment just on do you know where your property, let me strike all that. Do you know where your property line, how close to the street it is on the front of your house? Okay, you don't have a site plan, okay, all right.
So if I can ask the question
Yeah,
of the
sure.
zoning department, it's really been tough to understand here without the site plan. So would codes say that the lower part of the fence, the wall, the stone wall is in compliance? It's just the pillars that are not?
No, can you go back to the corner lot, the corner shot? Yeah, so.
The corner.
Yeah, that one there. So for us, kind of clear up a couple things. One, we have tried unsuccessfully to get the council to require permits for fences. I'll continue to fight that fight. So we can have these discussions on the front end so they don't end up here or end up in environmental court. For us, in the first 10 feet of a property, so Melissa brought up the visibility triangle, that solid walls have to be outside that. So the bottom portion is clearly a solid wall. So for us, in the first 10 feet of the property, a solid wall cannot exceed 2.5 feet in height. At any point it exceeds that, it's in violation. The posts themselves, technically in violation. I've seen some that are done with a solid on the bottom and open on the top. We've kind of worked with a little bit of hybrid situation. That's what I see a little bit more down the way. But it looks like to me that all of this area here is above 2.5 feet in height. So that would be a violation. This particular corner, I will impress upon the applicants to get with Public Works to make sure that's not in the city's right of way, because it looks really close to me. That is not something this board can help them with, but.
So you're saying on the corner there, it can't be solid, period?
Correct.
Okay.
And it comes to, Liz has the code section. It actually comes from the parking code in the zoning ordinance, this visibility triangle, and it applies not only to structures and outside the UZO, but it applies to signs, it applies to fences outside the UZO. Inside the UZO, this triangle doesn't apply since we allow buildings to set at 0 setbacks in many places, but anything constructed in that triangle's got to be clear, or like if it's a fence, it has to be chain link or picket or something open that you can see through. The goal is if I pull up like in their photograph and stop, I can look left or right. And
anything within the setback has to be see-through, essentially?
Well, in this is specific to signs, fences, and it would be structures outside the UZO would have to meet this.
So here, code would require it to be, if it's within it can be within 10 feet as long as it's clear?
As long as it's, as long as it's open. The code describes it as open. Haven't had a clear, solid fence yet.
Yeah.
But, I mean, I guess you could. I mean, sure. I mean, the goal of it is that I need to be able to, that I don't create a visibility issue, that I can see through it.
It sounds like what you're describing are sort of, if you had some horizontal
split rail type
split
fencing.
rail, yeah.
We've had some that have done the, instead of a picket fence on the vertical picket, had been horizontal slats in there. But that's for us is why the property standards inspector cited them for putting up this fence in violation of the code.
And
that's why there's no site plan, because they came down to see us and we issued a permit. These unfortunately happen much after the fact.
Oh, yeah, no, I wasn't commenting on that. I'm struggling to understand. But what's the part where it says 2.5 feet in height within 10 feet of a street right of way? So if the solid part of the wall was at 2.5 feet, that would be allowed in the triangle?
Not in the triangle.
Not in the triangle.
Within the first 10 feet. Not within the triangle, but within the first 10 feet. It would be permitted. So the triangle is kind of a separate code situation.
Is the public hearing still open?
Well, that's a
Okay.
good question.
It's still open.
Do you know how tall the low part of the fence is? Can you give us?
It has been measured 30 inches out of the ground.
It's no more than 30 inches out of the ground?
30 inches,
Okay.
exactly.
So that sounds like that part then, it was compliant, right, except for the triangle. Okay, so that part, okay. And the other question I would have is, would you say that does the road kind of curve away from the fence at some point? Is it curving away from the fence?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so, yeah, okay.
Any further questions from the applicant?
If I could, There appears, and can we go to the picture of the fence? It appears that there is a rather mature type of tree. I ended up getting the screen that's very blurry, and it's not just my old eyes that is blurry. It's pretty blurry, and I'm not good enough to look over it. Talk to me about your tree, because I'm trying to help a little bit here on the hardship. Hey, what type of tree is it?
I would say it's oak. I mean, I'm really not tree specialist, but it has been there for like 30 years. So actually, several trees has been removed out of the front of the house to enhance the look of this house. I'm uncertain what tree it is, but if it is interfering to the matter of this fence, we will be gladly remove it if it's necessary.
No.
I'm a tree lover.
No,
I'm a tree lover, so I will hate to do that.
Well, no, please understand that I'm probably, next to the chairman, the biggest tree hugger up here.
We're competing for that.
Yes, I realize that, Mr. Chair. But it is a mature deciduous tree.
It is.
Okay. And to replace it with a bunch of little ones really wouldn't do the...
If we will put up more trees rather than the one over there, it's going to be much more interfering to the view, because trees shouldn't be any issues. And then it's going to be really interruption with a bunch of pine trees or whatever to create. But we don't want to do that. We don't want to interfere with it and want to leave the tree as it is.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
Any further questions for the applicants? Okay, we'll close the public hearing and continue to discuss. I mean, in the past, we have considered an existing encroachment to be a unique site condition that constitutes a hardship. I don't know. I mean, the fence that they had sounds like it may or may not have had the visibility that was required.
Yeah.
Sounds like a picket fence. There is the tree.
My real thought, and maybe kind of a middle ground, and maybe is that I mean, and Mr. Hargis noted that corner may have to be adjusted if it's in the public works right of way there, regardless of what we decide. So maybe some kind of middle ground would be that on that corner, the post, that the high part of the post is removed down to about the low fence level at that corner, and maybe there's not cabling installed right that corner piece to leave that visibility open, but the rest of it could remain. I'm seeing Mr. Cole nodding.
Mr. Newton, I'm waiting for a motion.
Okay.
Yeah, I can get with that.
All right. Okay. I'll make a motion that we approve the variance as requested because of the existing nature of the fence that was replaced and the mature trees that would take to move it back that would have to be removed. And with the exception of the post on the corner, that be lowered to, well, I'm going to say to a height no higher than 3 feet. Just give them a little bit of wiggle play there at the top of that post to allow for visibility on that corner.
3 feet from grade? 3 feet from where?
Well, the height of the fence is measured from grade, if I'm not mistaken.
But where's grade if it's sloping?
Well, could I make a suggestion? Maybe remove the part that extends above the current kind of shelf-like part, and then I think.
Okay. Yes.
And then question for you: if they want to run cabling, or for everybody, are we going to allow any kind of something of minimal diameter to be placed there so that I don't know that they don't want to run the cable, I'm sure, crisscross across their yard. Or are you just suggesting that they're just going to have to do without the cable?
Maybe at that corner, it just doesn't have to. They testify that they don't have to like hold in a dog or something like that, or like. There's no. They testify there's no. It is purely aesthetic. as far as that goes. But I'd be fine with something, yeah, with a, you know, a support a minimal diameter to hold cable if needed. And then they confirm with Public Works as far as where their property actually starts there at that corner.
Mr. Lawless has a quizzical look.
I'd just rather have it to where it's subject to the determination of Public Works and NDOT, where they may have to move the whole thing, for all we know. I mean, I got no clue what they're going to do. But if it's in the right of way, it's going away.
Well, I mean, I get what you're saying, but that's not, the motion he's making I think what Mr. Newton is proposing is this is what we approved. They still are going to have to deal with Public Works.
Okey-doke.
I mean, if we want him to remove that's, I mean, he can revise his motion, but that's what I understand him to be saying is that to get a variance from us, he's proposing something that's okay with us, but we can't speak for Public Works.
But if they don't necessarily approve it, then they can say, well, okay, then they can say, well, we've got this approval from BZA, and
well, we can make that expressly.
All I'm saying is get them to approve it.
I noted Public Works in my motion, so I think that's part of it.
Lord knows what the motion's going to finally look like when it gets done.
We're going to have to start over with the motion.
Okay, great, okay.
Sorry.
All right, I move that we approve the variance as requested due to the existing conditions of the lot and the existing mature trees, and that with the exception of the visibility triangle that conformed to the height of the rest of the fence, and that it be subject to the review of Public Works and NDOT for the visibility triangle.
Okay, and can I suggest an amendment that they, to the extent okay with Public Works, that they be allowed to put something of whatever is minimally sufficient to allow them to run the cable on the corner if they want to do that?
Sure.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, there's a motion. Is there a second?
I second it.
Okay, Mr. Cole seconds it. Any further discussion?
I kind of liked it when you were clear on that post in the corner.
Okay.
Needs to be taken down and maybe be at a height that's a couple of inches above the rest of the.
Okay, yeah, I'd be fine with that, with the corner posts being no more than, say, 6 inches above the height of the remainder of the fence.
Okay.
I'll second, well, no, Mr. Cole is going to say it.
I second it again.
Okay, have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay. Congratulations, that passes, so. We're through, yeah. You're.
Members, the next case before you get started, case 61 on Woodland Street, I had an email exchange. I apologize. Previous meeting ran over, so I wasn't able to get to Elizabeth the answer, but this applicant's actually going to withdraw this case, rework a plan and refile it at a later date. So it's case 61.
Is that 921 Woodland?
921 Woodland. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so then the next case for public hearing is case 22-65. This is a request for a side and street setback variance for property at 717 Starlet Road. This is in the RS 40 zoning district. The applicant is seeking to construct a front-facing garage and requests a 10-foot reduction of the street setback from the contextual average of 82.8 down to 72.8. And also is requesting a 5-foot reduction of the side setback from 15 to 10. So we have here the zoning map and then an aerial photo of this neighborhood. Some photos of the site. This is a street view of the home at the property. This is a survey submitted by the applicant. This is a diagram submitted that contains the contextual averages by the applicant. And then this is the applicant's site plan. Do we have anyone here in opposition to this one? And I'm sorry, I can't really see because of the screen, but Mr. Chair, do we don't have any?
Anyone in opposition to this one? Okay, no, there's no opposition.
All right.
And I do need to state for the record that my firm has been previously adverse to EL Construction, who's a contractor. I don't believe that's going to impact my participation today.
Okay, that'll be noted for the record. Thank you. And then you may make your presentation. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you. Grover Collins on behalf of the Steimers. Collins Legal, 4104 Charlotte Avenue, Suite F, 186-37209. The Steimers are the main point, and they've given you a lot of the context, and the way the house is kind of situated, and I'll show you a different, if we can go to the previous, the star on Starlit, 717 is the one, you can see how the house itself is kind of tilted in such a way, and I've got another, if we can go back to the next, go forward, I'm sorry. You can see how they're wanting to make that driveway just straight through. If you look at the, and we'll go back and forth between these, but if you look at the previous, where it is, the low point on that south side is that 86, and if you extended that line across, you would only be 10 feet below. That's the variance they're requesting if they had a straight pad for the garage that they're requesting. And Elizabeth, I don't know if I can put this in here, but it may be easier if I can I connect this? I can drive it. But what they're asking for.
I'll do it as quick as I can.
And that's the greatest picture that you've got right there is that 24 feet. They're just looking for that square for the easy access in and out of the garage. The other point about the topography and the thing that is the hardship for them is if they put the garage on the left side of the property, there's a drainage swell there, and that's the picture I'm going to show you here. And the way the slope of the property goes, it all goes to that left side, and that's where the water runs. So they wouldn't be able to necessarily put that garage any other place. And just the way the house is oriented, it just makes it to where it would be a lot easier for them if they were able to put it on the side that they're at. And we're trying to get this picture up here, and we'll see if we can get it.
I think it might be a system delay, but when we tested it, I think it was good.
What she's done, and this is important, the way that she got these numbers and these distances is she obtained those from the surveys for those. 707 and 711 had previously been given variances. She had talked to the neighbors about this. They didn't have a problem to her left and to her right. And we also on Tuesday met with the councilman, and he seemed to be in favor. There should be something in the packet that they are in favor of that. We've talked to the neighbors, and they don't seem to have a problem, but right here is where that 24 feet would be, and that's the line that we're showing you. As far as the pictures, I wanted to be able to bring those up real quickly. So this is the front of the property. This is where they're proposing to put the garage right there. But this is on the left side of the property, just so you'll understand how much drainage there is, because that's the low point for this neighborhood. So they can't really put anything on that left side. So just the way the house is oriented and the way that they're wanting to do it, there's just no, and they have a lot of mature trees along that right side as well. So there's really nowhere else for them to put this property. And that's why they're requesting this variance right here. And again, it's 10 feet to the front right here, just in this one corner. I think that goes to about 2 or 3 feet. And then they're wanting to go just in this small area this 5-foot variance just for this triangle of the pad for the garage. So they're not asking for a large amount, it's just these small setback exceptions right here. And they would put it anywhere else, they just can't based on the topography of the land. And I'm going to close my presentation. If there's any questions, I'm happy to answer those.
Any questions?
I have a question. So, looking at these pictures, and the pictures of the front of the house are very helpful, especially the one where it shows the driveway going straight into the end of the house here. Do you know if this was previously a garage? I mean, it looks to me like this used to be a garage or carport or something where people parked.
I don't specifically, when I was looking through this in preparation today, I didn't specifically ask that question, so I don't have an answer for you.
Would it be fair to assume that, though?
He wasn't born that long.
Yeah, right.
Okay.
As a lawyer, I'm going to say I'm not going to assume anything. So-
Okay.
Works
So-
for us.
Yeah. What was making the assumption myself that this was formerly a carport or garage or something. I'm just trying to get to if this is self-imposed hardship, because obviously there was likely a garage or carport there in the past, and that within the existing structure that was enclosed for some use there. Are your clients the owners? Were they any part of? Looks like this has been redone recently, renovated.
They bought it in 2021, so this would have been done prior to them coming.
Yeah. Okay. That's what I was asking.
So if it was self-imposed, it wasn't by them.
Okay. Thank you.
Just for clarification of the record, your clients did not enclose if it was a garage or carport, correct?
To my knowledge, correct. And for the record, I don't know that that was a garage, and I can't.
Or a carport.
I can tell you that they purchased this property in 2021.
And it was enclosed.
That is my understanding.
God, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any further questions?
And I will, just to answer that, and I don't mean to harp on this, but these two, 707 and 711, were recently approved for similar variances, and we are asking it to go from 82.8 to 72.8. And just so you know, that would be right in line with her two neighbors south, and that's what's already been approved by this board on previous occasions.
Are there other homes in this neighborhood that have front-facing garages?
I don't know the answer to that question, but I can pull it up on Google Maps if you would like me to do so.
I'm a little curious.
Any further questions? Okay, we'll close the public hearing and discuss.
I know we've had recently garage issues that have come up, and I do see a little more of a hardship here with the trees as well as the drainage ditch, but I'm gonna look to the guidance of my design and architect professional colleagues with respect to those issues.
Since Mr. Collins did mention Google Maps, I did pull it up on Street View and Google Maps, and it was formerly a carport at one point in 2019, so.
But they got it in 21, I think, is that's the only evidence that's presently before this board.
I don't think there's anything in this particular zoning that prohibits a front-facing garage. It's not like this was rezoned to be an alternative zoning district.
Right.
But, I don't know. It'd be more helpful if other properties in the neighborhood had garages, and this was following that kind of development pattern.
Well, along those lines, let me just ask a hypothetical. So if this were within, or a neighbor were within the setbacks, there's no prohibition against building a front. Okay, that's what, okay, thanks, yeah.
I would prefer to see what it looked like, but we don't have that here today, so we don't know what this will look like, but, so I don't,
We're doing the walking view over
Are
here
you?
on this side.
And just to answer the Google Maps question, I would mention that that picture was captured in 2019. Yeah, okay.
We'll open the public hearing post hoc and close it for Mr. Collins.
I guess it's not unreasonable to request a garage to be an addition to your home. It's just sticking out quite a bit from the front facade, and it's not very generously sized, maybe
Yeah, you couldn't build a garage smaller than that.
a little bit.
A little
22 by
bit.
22, but that's
It'd be a
not
tight
enough
garage, yeah.
to- Yeah.
It's a reasonable size for a garage. Are they?
Well, yeah, and I mean, I think that people have, different thoughts about a garage being in the front. I understand that, but I mean, I always try to remember that I'm not on the board of, aesthetics or design, so I don't know that, that's just another factor to consider. Mike?
I was wondering if they had done any investigation of having the entrance to the garage on the side. I don't know if you can even do that.
I would, just based on what I'm seeing here, but it being 13'6" from the, even the existing building, 13'6", a car is 20 foot, you need at least 20 feet there to do that.
That's why you're
so.
the architect.
Unless you came at it from the other side, but then you're getting into the trees and front door.
And we don't want to do that.
Yeah,
No.
you wouldn't want to do that.
Can we go back to the slide that shows the setbacks? Yeah. Part of where I am too is this 102.4 foot setback for the one property, and wondering that, the idea of an established development pattern is to kind of look at the whole context, and if you have outliers, that sometimes is something that has to be considered here. And if that 102-foot outlier were not there, and we were looking at the balance of the properties, what would be the applicable setback at issue here? And I think it would be closer than, and I think it may, I don't know that it would be necessarily a big leap.
Oh, I don't disagree. I just didn't want to make a motion.
Oh, sure.
Someone else can make a motion. I just didn't want it to be me. Not you either?
Well, anything, Ms. Davis, you look like you might be contemplating something. You have.
I was just thinking about our recent cases, and I think this one's a little different because it, even though that's not before us, it did look kind of like a carport before, so they already had that pre-existing thing, and it seems like with a little help from us, they're trying to reestablish that. I mean, I don't think this is an enormous variance request. It's just it's a little bit, and so for me, I'm glad that Ms. Carpenter brought up the question of whether there are any other ones on the street face, but I think it can be done without interrupting that block face, and so I'm inclined to support it.
You're inclined to support the variance? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, if hypothetically this used to be a carport at one point, then it was front facing at that, it would have been front facing at that time as well.
Exactly. Well, I've never seen you already said with the math that they couldn't have gone behind the house, so. And I think there is a good argument for the other side I'm glad that they showed the pictures of the water runoff, because you can't build them. We don't want to interrupt that anyway. So I think there's enough of a case I think they've made a case for what's wrong with this particular lot to justify what they're trying to do.
I agree with Ms. Davis.
Do you agree enough to make a motion?
Oh, sure, why not? I make a motion that we approve the variance as requested based upon a showing of hardship with respect to the stormwater and existing trees on the property.
And I'll second that. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
Call the question.
What's that?
Call the question.
Yeah, okay. All in favor, say aye. Any opposed? Okay. One opposed, okay. So it passes 5-1. Oh, yeah. We're going to take a 10-minute break here before we start our next case.
Just give a quick minute before I read this next caption and make sure that we are recording.
If everybody in the back could have a seat, we're going to get started. Thank you.
And I'll just note for the record that I will be recusing and not participating in this one.
Okay. Thank you. We will note that. So, Mr. Chair, this is case number 2022-66. This is a request for a waiver from constructing a new sidewalk and from the in lieu contribution for property located at 3041A Dickerson Pike in the CS zoning district. Applicant is constructing an addition to the structure, the existing structure, for commercial use. Planning staff have recommended disapproval of the request. And in your packet, there's a letter opposing the request from the council member. Some prior case history to bring to your attention before we look at our slides. The applicant submitted this same request in 2019, and it was approved by the board with the following conditions. The applicant must maintain the existing sidewalk in good repair. Any portion found not to be ADA compliant should be replaced, and requiring a dedication of right-of-way for Metro's future planning use for increased safety and walkability for the area. And for instance, should the city, determine to replace the full sidewalk in the future. However, that order has since expired last September. So before you now is the zoning map to your left, and the aerial picture to the right. This is the streetscape of the property, so it is kind of a wide property with several different commercial establishments. So I've just got sort of the left of the property if you're facing from Dickerson on the top, and then on the bottom is what you would see toward the right if you were standing in the parking lot. This is a photo of the sidewalk looking south. And then this is the sidewalk if you were looking north. Here before you is a site plan that has been submitted by the applicant. And do we have anyone here in opposition to this request today? I don't think so, Mr. Chair. So, sir, you'll have 5 minutes to make your presentation. If you please press your button and turn the red light on, and then state your name and your address. Thank you.
My name is Gary Batson. I live at 401 Hollow Spring Court, Brentwood. I'm the engineer, and the applicant is out of town, the owner. Our hardship on this project is the topo. If you look at a different view from the Google Earth, it drops off from the back of the existing sidewalk down about 5 feet to that existing lane of parking adjacent to Dickerson Road. So any construction of a sidewalk would push that parking back, would push it out. It would actually be prohibitive because of the existing retail shops that are in that development or in that strip mall. So the topography, the owner spent a brief time stuck out of town, out of the country, when he was, due to COVID at 2019. So he was out of town early 2020 and was unable to get back. So that did prohibit him from developing this at that time. And we just asked for it to be it's prohibited because of the topo, so we asked to grant the request.
Well, what's the hardship with paying into the sidewalk fund other than paying into the sidewalk fund?
Well, this development is a small portion of the overall development. I do think it's different parcels, but that overall development, this development is all owned by this owner, and it's a small portion of it. So, to go back in there and have to build a new sidewalk or to pay funds in lieu of for that existing property, through there, well, this is probably 20% of the existing development.
But you would only have to pay in lieu for your portion of that. You wouldn't have to pay in lieu.
In front of our building, we have no sidewalk. It would be it's an existing ramp in front of the proposed building.
I don't know if we can see that aerial of the total property.
There you go. You had some other views that showed it. The extension will be going right where the nails in the cricket on the right-hand side of your page, and straight out from that is the entrance onto Dickerson Road.
But the property owner who you're representing owns the entire property?
Yeah, and it's different parcels though. So that's the entrance, and it goes straight into that nails. It'll curve over, missing the proposed building.
Do we know the cost of paying into the in lieu fund?
I don't know the width of the parcel.
The current cost is $186 per linear foot. So it would run the entire length of that parcel.
Of the entire parcel?
Yeah.
So that would be, again, if you go by that, then this is a addition of 20% approximately to the existing, and it shouldn't kick in the sidewalks anyway.
Well, that's not what the Metro Council has said. I understand what you're saying, but there's certain things that triggers, a certain amount of work triggers the sidewalk rule, so, and that's not something we have flexibility with.
What is that amount that triggers it?
We can give that to you. I think it's even less than 20%, but it's in the code. And clearly you're there because you're here. You clearly are doing enough work that it triggered it because you're here.
Yeah, the applicant came to see us to continue work on the original permit application. That's where we discovered his 2 years had expired. And this was originally came to you guys in 19, back before the sidewalk committee that I and Public Works sit on. So it was, this board granted that same relief. So that's sort of what we had to bring him back here. Essentially, I just didn't have any ability to extend the time limit on it.
And last 2 years ago, we approved paying in lieu of and dedicating a right of way and while he's getting that, does anybody have any further questions for the applicant? Okay, we'll close the public hearing and
Real quick, I'm not sure they were required to pay funds in lieu of before. So if they
we're checking on that. I think last time it was approved. I don't know. We'll find out here, but we'll get that information. Okay. Any further questions? All right. We'll close the public hearing and discuss. Can you, Mr. Hargis, do you remember what it was read earlier? I thought it was that they would pay in lieu of and maintain.
No, it wasn't. It was actually the applicant must maintain the existing sidewalk in good repair. Any portions found not to be ADA compliant shall be replaced, and dedication of right-of-way to Metro's future planning use is required. It was dedication of right-of-way, upgrading any portions of that sidewalk that aren't ADA compliant. And that is it.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Discussion? Well, I do note that the council person for this area wants there at least to be a payment in lieu of, and Metro, the planning is recommending that sidewalks be built. So I don't see them getting as good a deal as they got 2 years ago, and I'm not sure what I can't remember. I can't recall what happened 2 years ago and why that occurred, but circumstances have certainly changed.
Well, I think that there is a case for, I mean, they are only adding on to a very small portion of this lot. So I think I mean, maybe that could have been, that could have factored in the decision for it. I don't remember that case. I may not have been on the board then. I guess I probably wasn't. But I could see some, leniency as far as that is a very wide footage for the entire parcel rather than for the part that they're affecting with this building. I could see some kind of leniency there as far as maybe rather than the 300 feet that, looking at the parcel view, it shows about 300 feet for the frontage. Maybe, it's some, percentage of that, in lieu of the whole. And maybe including the conditions from before about maintaining and dedicating and upgrading non-ADA portions.
So what portion are you thinking of for?
Well, looking at the site plan, it looked to be maybe, there's the existing, okay. Looking at the site plan presented, I was thinking maybe 20% or 25%. 25% would be about 75 feet, so. About $14,000 they pay in the sidewalk fund.
I think that's acceptable if we're allowed to reduce it like that.
Yeah, I guess that would be a question. Are we allowed to reduce it like that? Okay.
You need a motion.
I'm going to make a motion that we approve a variance from the sidewalk requirements but that would still require 25% of the parcel width to be accounted for and paid into the in lieu of fund, along with maintaining, along with the conditions that were provided for in the previous approval.
I'll second.
Okay, discussion. Well, I would say like or not like the law Metro enacted, I'm not sure what happened the last time around. Maybe we didn't have, maybe the council person supported it, I don't know, but I mean, I know I've seen several where people did a renovation that wasn't huge to a corner house and had to pay, had to pay for more than probably that they're going to pay here. So I just can't do the 75 feet on 300 feet. I could do something a little bit. I really don't even like coming off the 300 feet because I think the law is the law. So maybe I should be careful what I say. But I know 75%. I can't get that down. I just think that's too. I mean, the council had a chance to say, if you do X amount of construction, then you only have to pay for X percentage of your frontage, and they never said that. So anyway, that's where I come out of. But we have a motion, so I'm through with talking about my part of it.
And I do understand. I think part of it's just, building takes time. COVID, all that kind of stuff can draw projects out, and this was approved at least 2 years ago with this. I think it'd be a little bit not the right thing to go back just because it took a little bit longer time. Be like, well, now you have to pay this extra $55,000 or $60,000. That I think that's
I understand Mr. Pepper's rationale, and I don't remember this one either, but which is kind of weird that I don't remember it, but I don't know, I think it's a little different than someone who's adding an addition to their house, or in this case, there are existing sidewalks, and I think they do have to upgrade, they are gonna have to put some, like, I just want you guys to know, like, you know, I didn't grow up far from this area. I'm familiar with this, and it's very close to an intersection that's kind of dangerous. That parking lot, because I guess because it's such an old building, it's also like half parking lot. Like even those sidewalks, like you can roll over those. Like it's pretty easy. Like where that Family Dollar is, that used to be a Walgreens. Like there's a lot of activity in that parking lot just based off of how many people go there. And I just think that I think Mr. Newton's approach of finding somewhere in the middle is probably best, where they do pay something, but I do think they're gonna have costs anyway when they have to maintain, when they have to upgrade the sidewalk anyway. So that's kind of why I supported it, because I typically would agree with you, Mr. Ross, but I think they're gonna have to spend money anyway to make parts of this ADA compliant, because parts of it are just on the same kind of level as the road. It's not even a real sidewalk anyway, even though it's there, but so that was my thought. So I thought the balance was sort of why I went that way.
And that was kind of my part of my thinking as well, is that to do the things that are required here in the previous application will have some cost to it. Yeah.
Mr. Lawless, you have a.
That sidewalk is not ADA compliant. A car can just pop up and hit you. It's not a real sidewalk. I just want everybody to know that.
I'm just leaning towards the way Ross articulated that, and besides for trees, sidewalks are a big deal. And they're making an election to do the thing. So I'm not seeing anything. So if you're hearing, you might not have 3 votes.
So
we might want to go back and revisit, amend it, or do something.
I was going to suggest, I could probably go for 150 feet at least. I think I'd have to have half if you could do half. I don't know. I can't speak for Mr. Lawless, but could you amend it for that?
I could make that amendment to require 50% for the of payment.
Okay, so it's.
That's already in there.
It's, the motion is amended, it's to pay in lieu of for 150 linear feet, and then the same conditions.
For 50% of the parcel width.
50% of the frontage.
Yeah.
And then the same conditions for last time.
Right.
The same conditions that were placed on it the last time we approved it. That's your motion. Okay, is there a second? Second, okay. All in favor of that motion, say aye. Any opposed? No. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I think we might check and let Mr. Bradford know that he can come on back in real quick.
Oh, yes, he can come back.
Okay. So the next case is case 2022-68. This is a request for a special exception from setback requirements within the UZO for a multifamily development at 2111, 2113, and 2115 Fairfax Avenue in the RM 40 zoning district. Applicant is seeking to reduce the side setback along Calhoun, the side street setback, I should say, from 30 feet to 15, and reduce the rear setback from 20 to 10, and reduce the street setback from 30 to 10. I'm going to go through these slides really quickly. That's the zoning map and then the aerial photo of this area. There are 3 historic homes, as are noted in the Planning Commission's recommendation. So this is the one at the corner of Calhoun and Fairfax, then the one next to it, and then this one's the closest as you move closer to 21st Avenue. Just want to remind the board that for your deliberation, the legal standard for the special exception in 1712-035 D2 is that the proposed setback shall not create an adverse impact on adjacent properties, nor detract from a strong pedestrian-friendly environment. So in this request, the Metro Planning has recommended approval, subject to the condition that the applicants consult with the Metro historic staff prior to demolition of the structures. Check and see if anyone's here in opposition to this case.
No opposition.
I do not see any either. Thank you. So that means that the applicant will have 5 minutes to make a presentation.
And Mr. Cuthbertson, before you, I did not see Councilperson Cash there, and we usually give council people the opportunity to speak.
I'm sorry, I didn't realize he'd left, but he wasn't here. Oh, okay,
Oh, yeah.
yes. I apologize. Yes,
Okay,
that's
well,
correct.
you're-
He came in afterward.
Go first, and then.
Okay, sure, fine, okay.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Dwayne Cuthbertson, 409 Merritt Avenue. I am here representing the property owners of 2111 through 2115 Fairfax Avenue. Before you are 3 special exception requests. None of these reductions we're asking for are variances. They can all be granted by the exception. They are in an attempt to permit a townhouse development as illustrated in the site plan in front of you. This property is about a half an acre and it's zoned RM40. So that's residential multifamily up to 40 units an acre. This half acre could permit up to 20 units on this site. And it's important to note that there are no overlays. It's in a national register district, but there are no protective overlays, no urban design overlays. And of course, anytime we have properties that are in these historic registers, we do work with historic staff, Robin and Tim, to get out there and do their surveys and salvage. So of course, we will do that. But again, the zoning allows for a pretty intense redevelopment of this site. Before you is about half that. We're asking for the exceptions to accommodate an 11-unit townhouse development. The RM40 zoning allows for buildings starting at 45 feet in height, and then it follows a height plane slope that could allow up to 5 6-story buildings here. We're asking for these townhomes at 3 stories with small roof elements access. So the RM40 is somewhat of a legacy zoning district. It doesn't come with an A on the backside. Again, there are no overlays that allow us to take advantage of the context, the historic context there. And that's sort of an important quality. In this district or in this neighborhood, you'll find all sorts of patterns. Older buildings built in the 20s that are right up to the sidewalks. And you'll even find a lot of new construction in and around this site where the setbacks are incredibly shallow. Of course, you will find some projects that were built in the 60s and 70s that have big parking lots in front of them with deep setbacks. This RM40 zoning district, when it was created back in the 80s, 90s, it was anticipating deep setbacks with parking lots in the front. And I think as a city, we've generally moved away from that. You see the adoption of the A districts and the overlays that ask for a more urban context. This area just hasn't been rezoned to such qualifiers. We still are dealing with the RM40. So the RM40 zoning district, it requires a 30-foot street setback. That's on Fairfax and Calhoun. Again, doesn't consider the context. It is just a straight, you set back 30 feet. And also, it requires a 20-foot rear setback. And again, that's regardless of the context. Our rear setback here is that southern boundary. This is a corner lot, and so units 7 through 9 face Calhoun, and for all practical purposes, the experience is that that's a side yard. Side yards in RM40 districts are 5 feet, 5-foot setbacks. We're asking for a reduction of that rear that 20-foot rear setback from 20 down to 10 feet. But what I would suggest is that, again, it works like a side setback. So the requested special exceptions are really to allow an urban orientation. We're asking for the exceptions to pull the buildings up to the street, to engage the pedestrian realm, to put porches, front doors along the streetscape, and tuck that parking into the rear of the site so that it's not visually obtrusive or impactful on the surrounding context. We are asking to consolidate all of our access to one point of entry on Calhoun, and we intend to repair the pedestrian realm, repair the sidewalks on Fairfax, and install sidewalks on Calhoun, which are new. It's important to note that we will certainly preserve all street trees on Fairfax, and we will be required to plant street trees on Calhoun, which we think will improve how this property is experienced in that neighborhood. It's a special exception, so we were required to have a community meeting, and we held that community meeting on June 9th. The council member was also participated in that community meeting. We had a pretty healthy attendance. The concerns about our requests had much more to do with short-term rentals than they did the actual layout. And so in that conversation, we agreed that short-term rentals are not, you have those conditions that we would subject any approval to in your packet. They are further restricting short-term rentals and then making any approval per the site plan.
So you agreed to no short-term rentals, to be clear?
Well, and to take that a step further, we would be willing to record a restrictive covenant and make Metro a party to that restrictive covenant that effectively would go with these properties in perpetuity.
So no short-term rental ever, really?
Correct, yes.
Okay. All right, thank you. Any questions? Yeah.
Yes.
I have a question. I don't recall if you addressed it. The hatched area on the site plan we're seeing here, that is a right-of-way dedication, and I think that what happened there is that moved the existing property line back into the property a bit more.
Yes.
And so the setback, this side street setback request from 30 to 15 is actually less than that when you dedicate that right-of-way.
Well, it's 15 from the current right-of-way. Once we have to dedicate, because Calhoun's a pretty narrow street, we have to dedicate 10 feet of right-of-way. So ultimately, yes, the
So it's
setback.
not as big of an ask as what it may seem, because you're moving, the property line is moving.
Yes, yes.
Because my question was, when I originally saw this, was whether or not, because the existing home is very close to Calhoun, the new proposed townhomes will be further from Calhoun than the existing home.
That is a accurate observation, yes.
Any more questions for Mr. Cuthbertson? Okay, thank you. I think Mr. Cash has probably got something to say.
Yeah, thanks. I'm here. Thanks. We did have a good, productive community meeting. There were about 10 people there. I think about half were living close to the property, and about half were like neighborhood association folks that like to watch and weigh in on things and shepherd the community. And the short-term rentals was the main concern, and I know that our laws changed earlier this year that you can't have non-owner occupied in multifamily, but that's Metro code, and there is some concern. Sometimes our system of knowing if an owner is indeed living on the property is less than ideal. And two, we are sometimes at the whims of the state in terms of our ability to decide for ourselves what our short-term rental laws are. Therefore, I think folks who were very concerned about short-term rentals, and there's a building that has short-term rentals that have been problematic fairly close to this, so some of the folks nearby have had ongoing issues that we've had to deal with. So that was a relief to hear that we can that they agreed to solidly prohibit short-term rentals on the property. And the other, what was presented was 11 properties. As Kevin said, the zoning allows for a pretty intense development, but we, not that we needed to know every little detail or every nut and bolt of it, but it was an 11-unit presentation that was made to us. So I think our understanding of that and feeling about that, we wanted to know that that's basically what we're getting. I know things have to change and plan a little bit, but having an idea of what we were saying yes to or approving, just having those assurances was positive. And I think visually it will contrast with the rest of that street. There are, most of the properties are set back more and the parking is in front of the property. I think visually there may be some adjustment. I think in terms of transportation, not having driveways or cars coming out onto Fairfax is a plus. If they're coming in, it's that one entry in the back. I think, it's a collector street. We have lots of students and bicyclists and pedestrians, so I think that is a plus. And getting the new sidewalk on Calhoun is also a plus. I did talk to planning about the historic. I don't know, you kind of look at the pictures. Honestly, the properties, there's no love lost for the homes. They have been kind of, two of them have been, I think, student housing, and they did not do a great job of following codes and keeping their trash off the front. And my understanding is that inside there's some issues of it being kept up. So I brought that up with some folks, and there was not any concern about saving them. I do like the condition that historic be able to go in and see if there's anything to glean from the property. I think that's mainly it. So with those conditions, I am in support of the request. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilperson Cash. Okay, we'll close the public hearing and discuss. I had to remind myself when I looked through this that we don't have to have a hardship because this is a special exception, so.
I think the applicant made a very good presentation, and appreciated the thoroughness of the packet and the materials, and appreciated the noting of the objections from the neighbors and the proposed resolutions of those objections.
To me, I mean, I thought that the plan is fine. I hate to lose the examples of early 20th century Nashville architecture, but so goes sometimes.
Whatever we come up with, the only thing I would be concerned about is the restrictive covenant needs to be approved by Metro Legal somehow, some way, so that doesn't, so if it gets messed up, they can't point, with all due respect, at us. This is called passing the buck, and make it Wally Dietz's problem.
Yeah, we could definitely make that a condition. And I do think it's significant that they're giving it up and they're not really playing games with it. They're willing to dedicate it in perpetuity, that it'll be, non-short-term rental, so.
And from Wayne's side, he listened to us last time.
Yeah.
So I compliment him.
And it's knowing something about the area, it's definitely an area that you could use some density, because, like a lot of places in Nashville, a lot of people want to be there and there's not enough housing, so. Well, I'll make a motion that we approve it with the term that the dedication, the agreement that the short-term, they not be short-term rentals, be memorialized in an agreement approved by Metro Legal, which I think it probably may have been anyway, but I think you're right. We need to make sure of that, and that gets recorded and needs to be recorded.
Can we include the planning recommendation that the applicant should consult with Metro Historic staff prior to demolition of structures?
Yes, and I'm sorry, that's a great point. I thought you all had already agreed to that. So, yeah, so another part of we'll amend it that the applicant consult with Historic about saving whatever parts of the existing structures you can that the Historic thinks can be salvaged.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, so motion second. Any further discussion? All right, all in favor say aye. Any opposed? No, that passes 6-1. Thank you all for the presentation.
6-9.
Oh, no, I said 6-1. Oh, I mean 6-0. Sorry, 6-0.
Senior moment
well.
with the chair.
I don't know what I was thinking yet. No, 6-0.
All right, now we have case 2022-69. This is a request for variance from street and side street setback requirements for property at 900 Wedgewood Avenue. It's in the R8 zoning district. The applicant is seeking to construct a new single-family dwelling with a detached garage in the rear and is seeking to reduce the street setback from Wedgewood from 40 feet to 35.5 feet and reduce the side street setback along Elliott from 10 feet to 5. Here is the zoning map, and you can see where this is a corner lot along a pretty busy boulevard portion of Wedgewood. Here's the aerial photo, and then this is the existing structure on the property. Here is two views of the side of the property along Elliott, and you can see where there's already a retaining wall there on the interior of the sidewalk. And then I tried to get an angle of the streetscape. The bushes in front of the current home did make it kind of hard to show the properties down the street, but here's a photo kind of farther back, and then I actually took two pictures and tried to combine them so you can see the church across the street on Wedgewood, and then there's some, I think a medical or some other kind of commercial use property up Wedgewood on the opposite side of Elliott, so the house would be there where that white picket fence is on the right. And here's the site plan that has been submitted. And I don't believe we've got anybody here in opposition. It's hard for me to see, but I don't think so. And so if you would please turn on the microphone and introduce yourself and state your address, please. You'll have 5 minutes to make a presentation.
And did you get the supporting packet I sent as well? Is that something we can pull up or no? I sent it to Ms. Tamika.
Yes. I believe everything's been shared with the board. Is there something in particular that you wanted us to look
There's a
at?
couple points that we may need to point to, but if we need to, I guess we can.
I can pull up the PDF, and so.
Copies if that helps.
Okay.
Andy Brazier, I live at 5312 Louisiana, hopefully soon 900 Wedgewood. I'm accompanied with my architect, Chris Strickland, and my builder, Brad Skipper. Chris has been living in Nashville and practicing architecture for over 20 years. Brad has been here for over 17. We built and designed my current house that I've been living in for a little over 5 years, and that went really well. We felt like it was a good team who can put together a good product, and so we pulled that team together again. I know you've been here a long time, so we'll keep it short. I'll stick to some quick things to help you understand.
If you brought, did you say you brought hard copies for all of us?
Of the extra packet, yes, ma'am. I didn't know how many people were showing up, but I do have some. Would you like me to hand those to you? Absolutely. Give me 1 second.
Before you get started, is this going to be easier for me to follow if I clear this so I understand? Because in the hardship, in the application, you say a variance would be required in order to construct said detached garage, but I looked at these site plans, and I mean, you need the variance for the home too, right?
Yes, sir. So what happened is we were looking at, first, can we just modify it and expand it? And the current garage where it sits gets in the way of that. The hardships that we're going to explain are how Elliott curves and cuts into the rear of the property, and there's no alley on the back. So the opportunity to move the garage and do something is very limited. So we feel like we've come up with a pretty good compromise solution. I'd love to point you to that.
Sure, yeah. I just wanted to make sure that
Yes, sir. I think it must have been
it's actually a house.
Yes, sir.
That needs the variance too.
There's currently a 2-story single-family dwelling there with a detached garage. We are proposing to build a single-family 2-story with an attached garage. So we're going back with exactly what's there, just trying to move the garage that is currently out of compliance into compliance as well. So this is the first house I bought when I moved to Nashville in 2006. It is currently where most of my community and where I do a lot of my life. And I've kept it all these years, knowing that I would move back one day when I had the means to make it a home that was big enough for family and community. So what we did was we first studied and spent a lot of time and effort. Can we expand? Can we renovate what's existing? Ran into quite a few issues that led us quite quickly, unfortunately, to the best solution on this property is going to be a new build. So we met with codes and started exploring options for moving the garage that is currently uncompliant with direct access in and out straight off of Elliott, 10 feet off the property line. And discussions with codes, as soon as we move that then needs to be a 20-foot setback, and this is when the hardship starts to come into play. Because Elliott cuts into the back of the property, there's not enough of a vehicular minimum depth to make that move. With no alley, we can't move it to the back and face the alley and, get around it that way as well. So what we came up with is a compromise solution, and if you look at the packet that you have on the 11x17s, it's labeled page 5. It's the last page, page 7, is the compromise solution where we have a drive off the rear of the property that then turns into a rear-facing garage. It eliminates the non-compliance of the garage as it currently sits for the direct access in and out. It also, if you go to the 2 pages before, or 3 pages before, pages 4 and 5, what you'll see is it also reduces the footprint of encroachment from what is currently encroaching with the garage and the house by over 30%. What it does and what we're giving up in that concession is we're giving up some prime backyard real estate. We're also reducing from a 2-car garage to a single-car garage, but it felt like the appropriate solution given the constraints. So our ask is not that we're moving it any closer to Elliott, but that our new construction is built along that same line. And then with regards to the front, and if you look at pages 2, just the first 11x17, we're looking to push the house back an additional 4 feet from where it currently sits. And if you look at contextually along Wedgwood, we're already set back from the contextual setback, and we're looking to improve that even more, to improve the sight line along Elliott. It will improve the sight line along the corner of Elliott and Wedgwood. But what that allows is for us to build the house, create that turn that we can then turn and get back into a garage so we can get around that issue that we have along where the garage is and still maintain some semblance of a small backyard for some privacy in the back. And I know at the end of the day, it solely depends on what you all decide. But we did reach out to my council member, Mr. Colby Sledge, presented all this to him, made sure that there weren't any issues from his end, so it wasn't a non-starter. And his response was, it all makes sense, and I don't see you encountering many problems with this explanation, is how he put it. And then my neighbor directly to the left has been my neighbor since 2006, Mr. Robert Bolajak, and we've been fully communicative of what's going on, and he's good to go as well. Happy to answer any questions or dive into any details. Try to do that hurriedly to keep you guys.
Any questions for the applicant? Okay, looks like no questions. So thank you very much, and we'll close the public hearing and discuss.
So I think the odd-shaped lot is a hardship, and he is moving the garage out of the setback. And the front new setback is further than the existing covered porch. And the reduction to the side, the requested reduction to the side setback off of Elliott is modest, and it's about the same as the existing condition. So I'm supportive of the request.
I agree with everything you said in terms of the ask is reasonable, it's a thoughtful process that they've gone through to ask for the variance, and the hardship in my mind is there.
Say that again, say the last sentence again.
The hardship is there with the odd shape, the way the lot curves in and kind of diminishes that ability to set back on the side.
I agree. I like that he's, moving the garage so that he can come into the back. Like, I think that that's nice that he sort of corrected.
Yeah, I think from the street, from Elliott, it's actually going to look less cluttered because the garage is getting moved in and you're going to have more green space there in the backyard. So I think what they're going to do is, I'm not an architect, but it seems like it probably would have a better appearance
So I will make a motion to approve the variance request based on the hardship of the odd-shaped lot.
Second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? Okay, that passes 6-0. You got the math right this time.
And then our last case today is 2022-70. This is a request to contribute to the pedestrian in lieu fund in lieu of constructing a sidewalk for property located at 922 Riverside Drive in the R10 zoning district. Applicant is constructing 2 new single-family dwellings, and the planning department has recommended approval of the request. Here's the zoning map. And this is an aerial view of what it, I suppose, would have looked like. This is the front of the lot. I had a little bit of a hard time figuring out. There's kind of like a vacant lot next to this one, and I'm not entirely sure which one of them it is, but this is what it looks like in the front along Riverside. And this was a photo of the drainage information along Riverside in that area, and the site plan submitted by the applicant. And I don't think that there is anyone here in opposition. And so if not, then the applicant may make his presentation.
Thank you, Ms. Waits. My name is John Michael from the Thompson Burton Law Firm, 1801 West End Avenue. Minor typo, I represent LMS Homes, who's the actual appellant on this case, and they are represented by Tyler Hawkins, my client, who's here with me today in the event that any questions are needed for him. What may be helpful, if you want to go all the way back to your zoning map, Ms. Waits, in case anybody's interested, it's actually the 2 lots that are side by side there where you see 2 separate HPRs being simultaneously built. There was some confusion originally with Fire Marshal that this was somehow a multifamily build, but it actually is just 2 lot builds. So we're calling it 922 Riverside, just by way of shorthand. You see the 112 feet of frontage there. That would be 112 feet of sidewalk to be constructed at this location. Today, we're respectfully asking for permission to pay into the sidewalk fund because of the stormwater drainage issues created by the actual creation of the sidewalk, and more importantly, the curb and gutter at this location. Installation of the curb and gutter will necessarily trigger, according to Stormwater and MDOT, improvements, and here's where I will ask for a zoom out to the overhead, please, north on this picture, across the next 7 lots. Improvements across the next 7 lots. When I talk about offsite improvements, I'm often talking about, you got to improve the drainage across the street. You've got to do a ditch line that creates culverts under the driveways for 1 or 2 lots. Across the next 7 lots, to be clear, those are 924 Riverside Drive, 926, 928, 930, 932, 934, 936 Riverside Drive, all on the same side of the street, where we would be asked to construct 325 linear feet, which by my quick math is just a little bit more than a football field plus one of the end zones almost. For the Vanderbilt grads in the room, see me after the meeting, I'll explain what an end zone is. Then going across Riverside Drive to do stormwater improvements by upsizing pipes from 15-inch pipes up to 36, going into an 8th property, 923 Riverside Drive, possibly all the way to the back of that property, close to the line between 921 Riverside and 924 Crescent Hill. I've called out what is that, 9, almost possibly 10, separate properties affected by the construction if we are forced to do all of the upgrades, off-site, infrastructural, not directly related to sidewalks. I am pro-sidewalk, you know that. My client is pro-sidewalk, you don't know that, but I just told you that. We think this is a grotesque overreach in terms of the off-site infrastructural improvements associated with these two builds, what I'll broadly refer to as a 4 build. The distinct hardship is the one rooted in state law, not just the section of the Metro Code that talks about the terms of a hardship. Here, we think that the effect of the hardship, though, is among the most damning that I've seen. And based upon approximately 10 years of being an attorney at Metro Legal, then working with zoning and being the zoning administrator, I've seen a lot of them, and especially since we installed this 2017 sidewalk ordinance, this one is pretty special. So I was actually happy to try to be of help with this case for my client. Of note, the stormwater for the 4 build is contained on site in this instance. And we found that interesting that we're actually managing our own stormwater, not having to do off-site improvements. It's just that once we install the sidewalk, curb and gutter, all hell breaks loose, if you'll forgive the casual phrasing, in terms of the other off-site work. The letter that I've submitted to you outlines the nature of the work with a little more specificity. We'll note here that sometimes when you see a 4 build, metro agencies will say, this is a bigger development. Maybe we need to shore up some of our infrastructural improvements. And I am not spending money on the build, so I can say very frankly, I don't begrudge that. I get it. If this was a 40-unit multifamily build, maybe these off-site improvements and the degree of improvements and the distance of improvements might make more sense, but not for 4 single-family homes in an R-zone district on Riverside Drive. That's not what we're building, and that's not an appropriate reach. Strictly for the benefit of the record, I will note that I'm not entirely sure those requirements from other agencies, not codes, are in fact valid legal requirements, but perhaps an exaction. Just saying that on the record in case I ever have to somewhere else. With all the other yards being dug up, building culverts under their driveways, however much time and money that costs, I know that's the secondary consideration, if any. We also open our doors from the builder's perspective to liabilities. How many lots do we cross? How many kids are we worried about getting into our little construction sites where we're building these culverts under the driveways? How many liabilities do we stumble into in terms of hopefully well-maintained utility easements as we go along the roadway there? These are all things that shouldn't be part of the equation. Now, here's a practical matter. Nobody's ever quite felt like the law necessarily gives us permission to pay more to the fund. We'd pay triple to the fund if we had to. I don't know that that's in your toolkit, though. So we would appreciate your consideration of and approval of our request to pay to the sidewalk fund in lieu of construction for those hardship reasons. We're happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Michael. Any questions for Mr. Michael before we close public hearing? Okay. Discussion.
Go ahead, Tom. You had your button first.
No, I always defer to my...
No, please go. I'm gonna go
I
after you.
just wanted to make an observation. This may be a first in all the time that I've sat in here that I heard Mr. Michael pontificate so well and in opposite of what he said when he was sitting over there. But it was well done. It won the day, at least with me.
I'm willing to make a motion that we approve the variance as requested due to the hardships outlined by the applicant. I do agree. I'm pro sidewalks, but as someone who's from, I live in East Nashville. East Nashville has never had the infrastructure. We still have a lot of drainage ditches in East Nashville. So as all this building happens, it's sort of hard to piecemeal drainage. If you're going to do drainage, you got to do it for everybody. And I definitely think that he well articulated the hardship, and that's why I made the motion that we grant it and that the applicant pay in lieu of because of the hardship stated.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, there is a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All right, all in favor say aye. All right, raise your hand. All right, 6-0. So thank you, Mr. Michael. Oh, yeah, sorry, we're adjourned. Yep. Officially adjourned.
This has been a service of the Metro Nashville Network. If you would like to see this presentation again, or for more information on this and other programs, visit nashville.gov.